A winter storm is expected to impact the Midwest by this weekend, and we could potentially see the possibility of a winter storm by next week for the Mid-Atlantic, where for many Americans that would be considered your first snowfall of the 2022-2023 winter season right up along the East Coast. If we were to continue to move forward with what the latest depiction of the European model is stating, we do see that there's this Clipper system that's located right in between the Canada and United States border, bringing about around moderate snowfall to northern Dakota at this time, and this is expected to continue to move eastward, bringing mostly moderate to light snow to North Dakota, Minnesota, as well as the northern portions of Wisconsin. So you want to pay close attention to that for your Friday morning commute or potentially your Friday afternoon commute if you're in Wisconsin, as it should make the road conditions a little bit more slick. You mainly should expect maybe around an inch of snow, not much more than that, not necessarily considered significant, but at least pay attention to that as you commute tomorrow as we approach the late time on Friday. And moving forward, we do see that this surge system that's going to come off the Pacific Northwest coast will move into the Midwest, bringing heavier snowfall, where some areas in South Dakota and northern Nebraska should expect 6 to 12 inches. I'd say as long as you're closer to the border of South Dakota and Nebraska, that's where the highest probability of heavy snowfall will occur, since the 6 to 12 inch category that the computer models seem to be honing in on is right in between the border of South Dakota and Nebraska. So you want to pay close attention to this, as this will be considered a significant snowstorm for you guys. And then moving forward, we do see that about midday on Saturday, this will move into Des Moines and then eventually Chicago. But this storm is expected to weaken as it continues to head further eastward, but the certainty is very high with this storm. So if you're in the storm's trajectory when it comes to snowfall accumulation, you want to make sure you take the necessary precautions, because it's unlikely we're going to see any major variations with this storm system's forecast at this point, now that we're only less than 48 hours out from the event actually occurring in the Midwest. But Chicago, Milwaukee, you should expect 3-6 inches of snow, and this could extend into Michigan as well, where you could expect enhanced amount of snowfall associated with the storm system. And then eventually it should move into the interior Northeast by the Sunday time frame, where again you should expect maybe more like around 1 to 3 inches associated with this storm system. It won't be necessarily very significant. It won't have a lot of instability to work with as it continues to move eastward. So we're not going to see the most impactful snowstorm for the interior Northeast, but still at least something to be aware of as we approach Sunday, January 29th. Now moving forward, it does become interesting because we do have a jet stream pattern that's developing that wants to bring cooler than average temperatures for much of the northern Midwest and the interior Northeast as well. And as you know, when we see a jet stream dip during the winter time in the United States, that of course enhances the possibility of a low pressure system developing, and also lowers the temperature enough for the possibility of a snowstorm to also increase. And that's what we're going to see into next week. We have this low pressure system that's going to come just behind this storm system that's going to bring 3-6 inches of snow to much of the Midwest. But the snow shower should be mainly very light for the interior Northeast, not bringing any snowfall, especially along the coast of the Northeast. The temperature is still too warm for that. We still have this very persistent and very strong ridge, and in fact, in New York City, it's pretty much guaranteed at this point. This will be the quietest winter in New York City's history thus far, as New York City hasn't gone beyond January 29th without receiving accumulating snowfall. And unless that changes within the next 4 days, which is highly unlikely at this point, New York City will break a record when it comes to how long it doesn't receive snowfall accumulation in a given winter. So this winter has been quite quiet for much of the eastern half of the United States, especially right up along the East Coast. But maybe that could change as we approach the early February timeframe, because we have a small low pressure system that's expected to come off the Pacific Northwest coast, and then it's going to dip dramatically southward. And along with it, we do see that there's going to be a lot of cold air behind it, to where a lot of the higher elevations of California, Nevada, and Utah will experience some snowfall, and this should move bring some rain showers into Southern California as well, and snow showers in the higher elevations. And we do see a lot of cold air is behind this low pressure system, and of course that will create an unstable environment thanks to this ridge that's going to bring a strong southerly flow to much of the eastern half of the United States. And we do see a little bit of snow develop in right in between Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. And if we were to continue to move forward by Wednesday of next week, February 1st, the snow approaches the mid-Atlantic. Now, in this scenario, the low pressure system is very weak. We aren't necessarily experiencing very heavy snowfall, but this will be notable because this would be the first time you experience accumulating snowfall potentially in Washington, D.C. if this scenario were to come for fruition. And we're still 6 days out from this actually occurring, so could this storm system potentially become more powerful than what the European model is expecting? We just need to wait and see. Depends on how much instability there will be, of course, how strong the ridge will be, because the stronger the ridge, and that's the more likely this low pressure system is expected to move a little bit further northward, and it'll more likely be stronger if we do see a stronger ridge, because that will create more of an unstable environment for a higher amount of convection to occur around storm systems. So we're going to need to wait and see how the position of this jet stream will be like as we approach next week. The GFS model doesn't expect the ridge to be expects the ridge to be a little bit weaker than the European model, which is the reason why the GFS model wants to bring the snow a little bit further southward and brings more of that heavy snow into North Carolina, where North Carolina could get involved with a major storm system. And moving into the more long-term future, we still see this persistent pattern throughout the United States where we have a pretty significant jet stream to bring cooler than average temperatures for most of northern United States before we do see the European model by late next week develop a significant snowstorm. But this is very far out. I definitely wouldn't really take this as factual, far from factual at this point. So we're going to need to wait and see if this persists. But the European model does expect an unstable environment to develop right around Texas area. And it's going to be very interesting beyond that point where exactly we'll see snowfall right up along the Ohio River Valley and potentially the mid-Atlantic in the future. Now let's take a look at what the GFS model is. The GFS model is stating a lot of the same things. It expects the same Clipper system to move through the northern Midwest, maybe bringing an inch of snow. And for this next storm system, expect around 3 to 6 to 6 to 12 inches of snow between Nebraska, South Dakota, as certainty is very high with this storm system. So make sure to stay prepared throughout Chicago, Detroit as well. The GFS model is a little bit stronger with this low pressure system than the European model, but for the most part, they're very similar in the snowfall forecast. So you should expect around anywhere between 3 to 6 to 12 inches of snow, as there's just going to be just enough instability behind this low pressure system and just enough of a southerly flow to bring a more significant snowstorm to much of the Midwest, including the bigger cities. Now, moving forward beyond that point, the GFS model also expects a trough to move down the California coast, bringing cold air behind it, and that will create an unstable environment right around the Texas area for thunder showers to continuously develop. We see this first round of snow showers move into the Virginia area, not bringing much snowfall at all, but the GFS model eventually does expect a more significant snowstorm as we approach this late next week to impact North Carolina and Virginia, where we do see very heavy snowfall affecting Raleigh as well as Virginia Beach. Richmond gets involved a little bit, and even the Delmarva Peninsula. So the GFS model is forecasting that the ridge is going to be weaker. Let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly to show you that. So this is what the European model is forecasting when it comes to the 500 millibar height anomaly by next week. Once this storm system is located around Southern California, we do see that the ridge is very strong. So the snow would be more likely to move a little bit further northward into more of like the Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia areas rather than North Carolina and potentially even South Carolina like the GFS model is forecasting. Now let me show you guys a GFS model's height anomaly. For the GFS's model's case, we do see very different. The ridge is a lot weaker. It's pretty much in the same position, but it's definitely a lot weaker than what the European model is forecasting. So, which is the reason why the GFS model wants to bring the snow a little bit further southward into the Carolinas rather than further northward into more of the Maryland and Virginia area. So it's going to be very key to pay close attention to the position of this ridge and the strength of this ridge as we approach next week, because that'll determine who will receive the snowfall right up along the mid-Atlantic. But the fact that both of the two main computer models are agreeing that at least some sort of snowfall will move into the mid-Atlantic does raise a certainty, I'd say, that we're going to see at least some sort of snow somewhere up along the East Coast. The big question remains where, and I'll keep you guys updated as we get more certain with the forecast. But I'd say it's becoming increasingly likely that the mid-Atlantic, at least somewhere along the mid-Atlantic, will experience snow next week, and this could be big because many of you guys along the mid-Atlantic, or I'd say most of you guys, or pretty much all of you guys, haven't experienced snowfall yet throughout the mid-Atlantic, as it's just been a very quiet winter right up along the East Coast. So here's the European model's snowfall forecast over the next several days. We do see that I know a lot of you guys are looking at the Northeast where you're seeing 6 to 12 to over a foot of snow. So this is for the snowstorm that's more in the long-term future. We're going to need to see if that comes to fruition. I'm talking about 8 to 9 days out. So there's still a lot of time to iron out the forecast. So definitely don't take this as factual just yet or anywhere close to accurate just yet, because there's still a lot of time and the GFS model does not agree that this same snowstorm will develop. So we're going to need to wait and see if this holds up. But we do see heavy snowfall associated with this next smaller snowstorm right around the mid-Atlantic for the more short-term future snowstorm. And we do see that for much of the Midwest, we do see 6 to 12 inches right in between Nebraska and South Dakota, 3 to 6 inches for Chicago, and then Detroit experiences close to 6 inches of snow in this scenario. And we also do see heavier snowfall in much of the interior Northeast areas as well. So that's definitely something to pay close attention to. And we do see snowfall into northern Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas as well from this instability that's expected to develop by the middle of next week, as all of this trough moving down the California coast. The GFS model's forecast is showing a very similar forecast when it comes to the northern Midwest, where we mainly should expect 3 to 6 inches throughout a large portion of the Midwest. However, for the snowstorms that are expected to develop further southward into next week, the uncertainty definitely does rise, as the GFS model wants to bring the snow a lot further southward into North Carolina and Virginia, where in this scenario, North Carolina would experience 3 to 6 to potentially over 6 inches of snow. And we do see that Arkansas and Oklahoma also get involved, which is one area where the GFS and the European model are fairly confident will experience some snowfall right in between Oklahoma and Arkansas. So you want to pay close attention to that into next week as well for those areas. So here's my snowfall forecast over the next week for much of the northern Midwest, as well as the mid-Atlantic, where you could experience the possibility of a winter storm by next week. But for the Midwest, where the forecast is very certain at this time, Chicago expect 3 to 6 inches of snow, so as Detroit, a large portion of Michigan. So make sure to take the right precautions, as it's likely by this Saturday you will experience a significant snowstorm right around the Midwest. But thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content.